Her fingers trembled as she slid the last file across the glass table. Olivia's boardroom was quiet. Dead quiet. Except for the ticking of the sleek silver clock on the wall. Her voice had been steady throughout the pitch, but her heart was a storm. Across from her, investors in navy suits leaned forward, stunned by the numbers, but Olivia wasn't looking at them. Her eyes locked on the man sitting stiffly at the far end. Daniel. The same man who once fired her in front of a crowd of snickering waiters for saying ain't instead of isn't. The same man who called her too rough for class. Back. Then Olivia had swallowed humiliation with tears burning behind her eyes. She had held her breath as she was pushed out the back door of the five-star restaurant like trash. It was raining that night. She'd stood there, soaked, watching luxury cars pull away, one of them carrying Daniel laughing into his phone. She had nothing, not even a ride home. And now she had 27 stores in 12 states, a fast-rising food empire, and the last laugh lodged silently in her throat. Daniel shifted in his chair, his voice cracking. Olivia. I didn't realize, this is remarkable. She didn't blink. You mean it's shocking someone like me didn't stay a waitress? He tried to smile, but it fell flat. No, that's not what I meant. Oh, I know exactly what you meant, she replied, her tone smooth but ice-cold. She remembered the night she slept on her friend's couch, clutching a rejection letter from culinary school, wondering if she'd ever be good enough for anything more. But then she remembered her mother's voice. Your fire can warm or burn. Make them feel the heat, baby. And she had. She had worked in hole-in-the-wall diners, taken out loans under names nobody pronounced right, and lived off cereal while designing a menu that now graced high-end hotel chains. She had turned pain into product. Daniel's hands were clasped tightly now. Look, I'm in trouble. The investors pulled out. I need someone with real pull in this space. And your brand is killing it. I need a partner. I'm asking for a lifeline. Her board watched in silence, waiting. Olivia leaned back, letting the words settle. She looked him in the eye. You didn't see value in me when I spoke differently, when I looked like the help. But now that I wear heels and own the table, suddenly I'm valuable? He went quiet. His pride was bruised, but his fear ran deeper. Olivia stood up, slowly, the room rising with her. She walked to the window and looked down at the city that once ignored her. The same city where she now owned 3 buildings outright. Then, without turning, she spoke. I built something from nothing. No silver spoons, no second chances, just grit. You built something with everything and lost it. So tell me, Daniel, why should I trust you with anything I've built? Daniel's mouth opened, then closed again. There were no words that could fix this. Not now. And yet, her heart, scarred as it was, still beat human. Her mother always said, don't throw dirt. Plant something. She turned and looked at her assistant. Get my schedule cleared for tomorrow. Daniel perked up, hope flashing in his eyes. But Olivia wasn't done. She faced him fully. You'll come in at 8 a.m., not as a partner, as an observer. You'll take notes, Daniel. You'll listen. You'll learn how to run a company with dignity. If you make it 30 days without ego, then we'll talk. He stared at her like she'd just handed him water in a desert. Thank you. Thank you, Olivia. She shook her head. Don't thank me. Earn it. And with that, she walked out of her own boardroom. Head high, back straight, heart pounding with everything she used to cry about and now used as fuel. Daniel walked out of the boardroom trying to fake calm, but his chest was tight and burning. His tie felt like a noose, his breath shallow, every step heavier than the last. He gave a polite nod to Olivia's assistant, who didn't even look up. The elevator doors closed, and his reflection stared back, older, smaller, exposed. He was no longer the man with power, just a man asking for mercy. In the lobby, heads turned the moment he stepped out. Phones lit up, whispers cut through the air like knives. "Isn't that Daniel Caldwell?" someone said with a smirk. "That's the guy who fired her," another whispered. The doorman didn't even greet him, just gave him a look like he already knew. Daniel pushed through the revolving doors into the bright street, but the sunlight wasn't kind. It exposed every wrinkle, every failure, every regret. He checked his phone to escape, just numbers, red ones. Shame followed him like a second shadow. The city that once applauded him now pretended not to see him. Upstairs, Grace closed the boardroom door with quiet finality. She looked at Olivia, stunned by what she'd just witnessed. "That was brutal," she whispered, unsure if it was okay to say it aloud. Olivia didn't speak, didn't blink. She was staring at the chair Daniel had occupied, her jaw clenched, her hands still. The board murmured nervously among themselves, faces pale with surprise. "That's the Daniel Caldwell?" one man whispered. "Didn't he call her unprofessional in front of an entire staff?" another asked. "She owns 3 companies now." "He's asking for favors," someone muttered. The room shifted and everyone realized. The power had changed hands. Olivia turned and walked toward her office without saying a word. Her heels echoed down the marble hall, cold and commanding. Every step was a reminder. This was her building, her company, her table. Behind her, nobody dared to follow. Not even Grace. The moment her office door clicked shut, Olivia let the emotion crack through the steel. Her hands trembled slightly as she rested them on her desk. Not from weakness, but from the storm rising behind her ribs. Everything she'd buried, every tear she hadn't cried, begged to be released. But she swallowed it whole. Again. Daniel stepped out of the boardroom with his heart hammering in his chest like it was trying to escape. The hallway felt longer than he remembered, the lights overhead suddenly too bright. He adjusted his tie, but it clung to his neck like a noose-soaked, in regret. Staff walked past him without a glance, as if he didn't exist anymore. And in that moment, he realized he didn't. He pressed the elevator button with a shaky finger, eyes darting toward the boardroom glass. Through it, he saw silhouettes, but none moved to stop him. No voice called out. The elevator dinged. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped in. The mirror inside caught his reflection. What stared back was not the man who once ruled this city, but a ghost of who he used to be. The doors shut, and the silence was suffocating. Daniel clenched his fists, trying to will strength back into his posture. But the image of Olivia's cold stare kept flashing in his mind like lightning. The same girl he called too unpolished was now the woman deciding his fate. And deep down, he knew she had every right to turn her back. In the lobby, the air shifted the moment he stepped out. 2 receptionists locked eyes across the desk. One whispered, "Is that really Daniel Caldwell?" And the other smirked. Phones lifted, cameras clicked, and the shame he thought he could bury came rushing to the surface. He tried to walk fast, but every step dragged his pride behind him like chains. As he pushed through the glass doors, a delivery guy held them open longer than needed, just to get a better look. Outside, the city buzzed on, but to Daniel, it felt like every person was staring. He checked his phone, needing an escape. Bank alerts, declined transactions, low balance. Red numbers that screamed louder than any voice ever could. Upstairs, Olivia didn't move for nearly a minute. She stood motionless in the center of the boardroom while the executives shuffled their papers. Grace finally closed the door, her face pale with disbelief. "That was intense," she whispered, not daring to meet Olivia's eyes. But Olivia didn't flinch. Her breathing was even, her jaw locked like stone. Her silence said everything. Around the table, the murmurs began. "Was that him? The Daniel Caldwell? He used to have a 10-year wait list for investors. Didn't he once mock Olivia for saying gonna instead of going to? I can't believe she just sat there and let him beg." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They remembered the headlines when he fired her, when he made her the face of what not to be, and now she was running a $40 million empire, and he was asking to survive under her shadow. Every board member in that room felt the shift. A storm had passed, and a queen had risen. Olivia turned without a word, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. Grace followed a few steps behind, but didn't dare walk beside her. Olivia's shoulders were squared, her eyes forward. That boardroom used to belong to men like Daniel. Now it bowed to her, and she didn't need to shout it. Her silence roared. Inside, her office, the door closed with a whisper, but the emotional noise in her chest was deafening. Olivia placed her hands on her desk and leaned forward. Her breath caught. Her reflection in the polished wood showed a powerful woman. Still, somewhere deep, was the girl who was once humiliated. But she wasn't crying anymore. Not now. Not ever again. Across the city, social media detonated. Screens flooded with side-by-side photos. Daniel begging in a boardroom, Olivia staring down a man who once laughed at her. The hashtags were merciless. Olivia wins karma in heels. Full Circle Payback commenters weren't just watching, they were cheering. One tweet read, "He said she didn't speak the language of success. Now she owns the dictionary." Another, "Daniel fired Olivia for sounding poor." The next morning, the steps of her building looked like a movie premiere. Flashbulbs fired as she exited her car. Her security cleared a path, but the paparazzi didn't back down. "Olivia, will you partner with Daniel? Did you do this? To get revenge? Can a man who crushed you be trusted again?" She paused halfway up the steps, letting the cameras get their moment. Then she turned slowly, removing her sunglasses with calm precision. Her eyes cut through the noise like ice. Her voice was even, clear, controlled. Sometimes life gives you the same test twice, just to see if you learned the lesson. She turned again, walked into her building, and the doors closed behind her, softly, like justice. Side her corner, office. Olivia stood frozen by the window, watching the city blink beneath her like a machine she once feared. The silence behind her desk was deafening. Her fingers traced the edge of a framed photo. An old one. Cheap frame. Diner uniform. Her eyes were younger then, but they held the same fire. The one Daniel tried to stamp out. Her mind pulled her, backward without warning, dragging her into that bitter memory. That night at Sterling Kitchen, rain hammering the windows, orders piling up. She'd been working double shifts, holding her smile together with tape. "Table 3 needs their check," someone had yelled, and she rushed, just like always, until the moment she bumped into him. Daniel had been standing near the bar, pristine in his $1,000 suit. The tray in her hand had slipped slightly. One glass wobbled, didn't even spill, but his eyes turned on her like she'd ruined his life. "Watch it," he said coldly. Then louder, for the whole room to hear, "Is English even your first language?" The restaurant went quiet. Her breath caught, Her cheeks burned. She'd said nothing. Just picked up the tray and moved on. But inside, something cracked. The staff giggled behind her back for weeks. Customers whispered. That line became her label. She remembered crying into her steering wheel that night, parked outside a 24-hour gas station. She had $43 to her name, and a dream no one believed in. I speak with an accent, she had whispered to herself, gripping the wheel. Because I speak more than one language. What's his excuse? And that was the night she stopped applying for permission. Back in her office now, Olivia blinked and dragged herself out of the memory. But the emotion stayed. That night had branded her. Not because Daniel embarrassed her, but because he taught her exactly what she never wanted to become. Arrogant, empty, small in all the ways that matter. She rose from his rejection like fire from ash. Her mind whispered things she never said aloud. You wanted me to speak differently, Daniel. I learned the language of contracts, of mergers, of equity. You wanted me to stay small. I became bigger than your name. You wanted to erase me, but you gave me every reason to write my own story. She turned away from the window, her chest rising slowly, her heels pressing against the marble floor. In the quiet, she could still hear her younger self, tired, broke, swearing she'd never let a man like Daniel define her again. And today, she hadn't. On the wall beside her desk was the first business license she'd ever received. She kept it there on purpose. It wasn't framed in gold. It was scratched, creased, edges curled. But that paper meant more to her than any trophy. It wasn't proof of money. It was proof that she had survived, and built, and risen. Grace knocked, gently. The press is still outside. Want me to cancel the noon meeting? Olivia shook her head once. No. She looked in the mirror near the door, fixed a single strand of hair. I've got an empire to run. Then she added quieter, like a vow to herself, and no one's ever going to silence me again. Olivia stepped back from her desk, and her legs trembled before her mind even registered it. The storm outside couldn't compete with the one. Rising inside her chest, she gripped the edge of the table, hard, her knuckles turning white. Her heartbeat was too loud, like it was knocking from inside her ears. But her face, it was still a painting, untouched, controlled. She moved toward the mirror slowly, like her body weighed more than it did a minute ago. Her heels tapped with elegance, but her core felt hollow, shaking. She stood before her reflection, shoulders strong, chin up, but her eyes betrayed her. They were glassy, wet at the edges, betraying decades of buried ache. She blinked hard. The tears didn't fall. Not yet. Then it happened. Just one. A tear slipped down the side of her face like it had snuck past the guards. Olivia inhaled sharply and wiped it away like it offended her. Her hands were trembling now, slightly, quietly, like she didn't want them to be caught in the act. She bit down on her lip until it hurt. Pain was easier to control than grief. She turned away from the mirror too fast, afraid of what else might escape if she kept looking. As she paced the office, her mouth curled upward into a soft smile. But it wasn't real. It was the same smile she gave customers who snapped their fingers at her for more water. The same one she gave Daniel the night he said she didn't belong. In business. Her survival smile. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Saw the news. So proud of you. He must be sorry now. Olivia smiled again, but this one cracked. Her chest twisted, breath shallow, emotions rising like floodwater. She pressed her hand over her heart, trying to calm it. But it kept hammering, like it remembered, every time it had been broken and forced to beat anyway. She sat down, slowly, gently, like if she moved too fast, her whole past might spill out. Her fingers hovered over her laptop keyboard. Her inbox was exploding with messages. Congratulations. Interviews, podcast offers. But all she could think about was that night Daniel called her unprofessional, and how she forced herself to smile through it, even when she was breaking inside. A knock on the door. She didn't answer, just wiped under her eyes fast, like the tears had never been there. "Come in," she said, voice steady, as if nothing had cracked seconds ago. Grace stepped in holding papers, but paused when she saw Olivia's face. She noticed the red eyes, the damp cheek, but didn't mention it. She knew better. "You sure you're okay?" Grace asked gently. Olivia smiled again, this one brighter but still hollow around the edges. "I'm fine," she said, and she almost believed it. But inside, her younger self was curled in a break room crying on her lunch break, whispering, "One day you'll see me." And today, he did. Olivia stood again, gathering herself, adjusted her blazer, smoothed her hair. That small tremble in her fingertips was still there, but it didn't stop her. She walked to the door, smiled at Grace with a touch more truth in it, and said, "Let's get to work." Her eyes still burned, but they also blazed. When Olivia stepped into the press room, the cameras flashed like lightning. Every lens pointed at her, every mic hungry for her words. But behind the crowd, near the exit door, a figure shifted. She felt it before she saw him. A shadow from her past. Daniel. Older now, paler. Out of place. Watching her with eyes that didn't match his old arrogance. She froze for half a breath. Not fear, not panic, just calculation. He shouldn't be here, not at her conference, not near her company. Security hadn't been notified, so how did he get in? She turned to Grace subtly and whispered, "Get his name off the list. He's not invited." Grace blinked. "You know him?" Olivia smiled, tightly. "Oh, yes. I know him." Daniel didn't move, didn't smile, just stood there like a ghost waiting to be summoned. But Olivia didn't flinch. She addressed the press with poise, answered questions with power, eyes locked straight ahead. But part of her mind was burning. Why now? Why him? What's he after? Because men like Daniel never come back, unless they need something. After the conference, her private elevator door opened, and there he was, already inside, calm, hands in pockets. "Hello, Olivia," he said like nothing had happened. She didn't step in, not yet. Her eyes scanned, him like a surgeon eyeing a tumor. "Wrong elevator," she said coldly. He gave a weak chuckle. "I thought you'd say that." She stepped inside anyway. The doors closed, just the two of them. No audience, no mics. The silence choked. "How did you get in?" she asked flatly. "I still have friends," he said. "For now," she replied, voice sharp as glass. "What? Do you want Daniel?" He hesitated, a flicker of something she didn't recognize. Fear? Regret? No. Desperation. "My company's collapsing," he said, eyes finally cracking. "I made mistakes. I backed the wrong people." She stared. He kept going. "I heard what you built. The way you turned everything around. They're calling. You the next tech legend. I figured maybe we could talk." He added quieter, "Maybe you'd help." Olivia laughed once, sharp, humorless. "Help?" she echoed, turning toward him slowly. "You fired me in front of an entire restaurant because you thought my English wasn't good enough, and now you want my help?" He looked away, shame flickering across his face. "I didn't mean it like that." Yes, she cut in. You did. The elevator stopped. Floor 47. Her floor. She didn't step out. Just looked at him for one long second. Then she asked, "Are you broke, Daniel?" He blinked. "I'm not liquid right now, no." She stepped closer, eyes like fire. "So, you want me to clean up your mess? The same way I cleaned tables while you mocked me?" He didn't respond. "Couldn't." "Get out," she said softly. He didn't move. "Now," she added, colder. Inside the elevator alone, her breath came shallow again. Her hand clenched the rail, not out of fear, but fury, the nerve. The man who once made her cry in a parking lot was now groveling beneath a glass ceiling she shattered, and still, part of her shook. Not because she wanted to help, but because power changes everything. And now she held it. Back in her office, Grace entered quickly. "Do you want me to blacklist him?" Olivia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to the window again. Rain was starting to fall. "No," she said finally. "Let's wait." Grace frowned. "Wait for what?" Olivia's lips curled into something between a smile and a warning. "To see how desperate he's willing to get." Next morning, Olivia arrived early, hours before anyone else. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were sharp, too loud to rest. She replayed Daniel's words again and again. "I made mistakes. I need help." But the way he said it, something was missing. Something was off. And Olivia never ignored her gut. She opened her laptop and pulled up his name. Daniel Wexler, former executive of Crestline Tech, fired a year ago. Rumors of embezzlement. She scrolled deeper. Lawsuits, unpaid investors, multiple shell companies. But something new caught her eye. A document uploaded 5 days ago, a patent transfer request. The name on the buyer line? It was her own company. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't authorized that deal. She hadn't even seen that tech before. And yet, the transaction was pending, waiting for her digital signature. Someone inside had forged her approval. Her hand hovered over the mouse, pulse hammering. She traced the metadata, timestamps, server activity. The request came from an internal. Terminal, not Daniel's, not external. That meant someone in her company, someone with access, someone she trusted. Grace? No, impossible. But the time matched yesterday's press conference, while she was distracted. She leaned back, breathing slower, trying to piece it together. Daniel hadn't come just to beg. He'd come to confirm whether the trap was working. The fake deal, the help me performance. He was testing her reaction, because if she signed that contract, he'd own the one piece of tech that could bankrupt her empire. Olivia's fingers moved fast now. She printed the document, pulled up employee key logs, checked internal device IDs, and then she froze. One access ID stood out, used during the upload, logged in from the 11th floor, not tech, not marketing. That was her executive support level. And the name beside the login? Julian Marlowe, her second in command, a man she had mentored, promoted, trusted with every meeting she couldn't attend. And now, the first crack had appeared. She sat very still. The paper in her hand trembled slightly. Her empire wasn't just under threat. It was bleeding from the inside, and Daniel was only the face. Someone else was pulling strings behind the curtain, and Olivia needed to cut them. Fast. Olivia's eyes narrowed as she stared at Julian's name. On the screen, the man she had trusted more than anyone. His face flashed through her mind, smiling in meetings, offering calm words during tough calls, standing by her side like an unshakable pillar. But now, that pillar was cracked, crumbling, poisoned from within. Her heartbeat quickened with a bitter pulse of betrayal. She tapped the call button, and Grace's calm voice answered immediately. "I found something. Julian's access logs." "There's no mistake." Olivia's voice dropped low, cold and fierce. "Prepare a meeting, discreet, now. I want to see everything, emails, financials, chat logs. I want to know what he's hiding." Grace hesitated but obeyed. Trust shattered is never quietly repaired. While waiting, Olivia sat back, mind spinning faster than the wheels on the city streets below. How long had Julian been playing this double game? How many cracks had she ignored, blinded by loyalty? Her hands clenched into fists. She had built this empire on trust, on believing in people like him. Now, that trust was a weapon turned against her own throat. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're closer than you think. Watch your back. A friend." Her breath caught. Was it a warning or a threat? She looked at the sender's ID. Blank. No name, no trace. Only this cryptic message to fuel her rising fire. Someone was watching, someone was helping, or maybe someone was playing her. The office door opened sharply. Grace stepped in, tablet in hand. Face grave. "I compiled everything. Julian's been funneling funds to a hidden account. And there are encrypted emails with Daniel. They were planning this from the start." Olivia's eyes burned brighter than ever. "So Daniel's not just begging. He's bait. And Julian, he's the hook." She rose from her chair, voice hard and steady. "It's time for the reckoning." Olivia sat alone in her dim office, the glow of her laptop casting sharp shadows on her face. The encrypted emails between Julian and Daniel weren't just business. They hinted at something darker. A hidden meeting scheduled for midnight. The location was vague, just coordinates on a map. She stared at them, heart pounding. What were they planning that needed secrecy this deep? Her phone buzzed again. A calendar invite appeared. Midnight. Warehouse 23. No sender name. A chill crawled down her spine. Olivia's fingers hovered over the decline button. But something pushed her to accept. Curiosity? Or a warning she couldn't ignore? She closed her eyes briefly and whispered, "I'm ready." The city outside seemed to hold its breath with her. She remembered the times Julian had brushed off, her questions, the subtle lies that never added up. Now it made sense. He wasn't just stealing from her company, he was stealing from her future, her empire, the trust she'd built on blood and tears. And Daniel? His desperate act was a distraction, a mask for something far worse lurking in the shadows. A soft knock startled her. Grace peeked in, eyes cautious. "You're going out there alone?" Olivia nodded, determination hardening her voice. "If I'm going to stop this, I need to see the truth with my own eyes. No more games, no more betrayals." Grace swallowed, then handed her a small recorder. "Be careful." Olivia smiled tightly. "Always." As she stepped into the night, Olivia's mind raced, but one thought echoed louder than the rest. Trust no one. The real war wasn't just against Daniel. It was a betrayal that ran deeper, darker, and closer than she ever imagined. And the next move would change everything. Now, what no one expected was how quiet the warehouse was. No cameras, no guards. Just the cold hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Olivia slipped inside, heart pounding, every step measured, every breath controlled. She wasn't just walking into a meeting, she was stepping into a trap wrapped in shadows and whispered lies. The room was nearly empty except for a long table and two figures seated at the far end. Julian's head snapped up as she entered, surprise flashing across his face like a cracked mask. Daniel sat beside him, eyes dark, no longer the desperate man she'd seen on stage. This Daniel was colder, calculated. The desperation was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. "You came," Julian said, voice smooth but tense. "We thought you might not." Olivia's gaze sharpened. "Funny. I never miss a show, especially when the script's this interesting." Daniel's lips curled into a thin smile. "You're stronger than we thought, Olivia. Too strong." Her fingers clenched. "That's why you had to try this." Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Julian stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. "We could have worked together, built something even bigger, but you had to betray us first." Olivia's chest tightened. "I betrayed you." "You were stealing from the company I built. You made your choice." She stepped forward, her shadow swallowing the space between them. "And now, it's over." Suddenly, the warehouse lights flickered and went out. A heartbeat of darkness, then a sharp click. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind her. Silence crashed in like a wave. Olivia's breath caught, muscles tensing for what came next. Because no one expected the real power play was only just beginning. The darkness wrapped around Olivia like a shroud, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes adjusted, heart racing. Not from fear, but calculation. She wasn't trapped yet. Not until, she decided. A faint glow pulsed from a device on the table, Julian's phone, still unlocked. She moved closer, every step silent but deadly. Then Daniel's voice broke the silence, colder than ice. "You think you're the only one with power here?" Olivia's spine stiffened. "We set this up to test you, to see if you'd fold under pressure." She laughed, low and fierce. "You underestimated me. You always did." But the question hung heavy. Why the test? What were they really after? Suddenly, a hidden panel slid open in the wall, revealing another figure stepping into the light. A woman, sharp and confident, eyes locked on Olivia. "Hello, Olivia. I'm Sophia." Olivia blinked, heart skipping. Sophia, the name hit her like a bullet. A rival she thought long gone. The woman who once tried to steal her first startup idea years ago. And now? Standing there with Julian and Daniel, Sophia smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You built your empire on trust and innovation, but power attracts predators, and you've been feeding them all along." Olivia's mind spun. The pieces fell together. Sophia wasn't just a wild card, she was the mastermind behind the internal sabotage, pulling strings from the shadows. Before Olivia could react, the lights flickered back on. Cameras hidden in the corners switched on, broadcasting live. "Welcome to your reckoning," Sophia said, voice smooth like silk. Olivia's eyes locked on the cameras, the cold glow reflecting off the lenses like countless accusing eyes. Her heart hammered, not from panic, but from the fire rising inside her. This was no longer just a confrontation. It was a battlefield, and she refused to be the victim. Every second counted. Every word would be weaponized. She took a slow, deliberate breath and stepped forward. "Sophia, Julian, Daniel, thank you for the live audience. I hope they're enjoying this betrayal as much as you are." Her voice was steady but beneath it. A storm brewed. She knew she had to control the narrative, or everything she built would crumble like dust. Sophia's smile faltered just a fraction. You always were the queen of spin, Olivia, but this time the truth will drown your lies. Olivia tilted her head, eyes blazing. Truth? You mean the truth you twisted? The lies you planted? You thought you could steal my company, destroy my reputation, and walk away? Julian stepped closer, tension radiating off him like heat. We've got the contracts, the proof. The investors are watching. Your empire ends tonight. Olivia's gaze sharpened, unwavering. You forgot. One thing, you forgot who I am. I'm not just the CEO. I'm the woman who survived every hit, every betrayal, and came back stronger. Olivia's mind raced like a storm, every thought a sharpened blade. This was the moment she'd trained for, the moment when fear could either freeze her or fuel her fire. They think I'm cornered, broken, she told herself, but they don't know the strength I've buried beneath this calm. Not yet. Her pulse steadied, resolve hardening like steel forged in fire. Sophia's eyes flickered with doubt, a rare crack in her carefully constructed mask. Behind that confident smile lurked a sliver of fear. Olivia isn't just a target, she's a force. The woman she once tried to crush had risen beyond her wildest nightmares. Did I underestimate her? The thought unsettled Sophia more than she cared to admit, but pride kept her voice steady. Julian's mind was a chaotic mess of ambition and regret. This should have been simple. Take the company, claim the prize, vanish. Instead, the plan was unraveling like thread pulled too tight. He glanced at Daniel, searching for answers, but found only cold calculation. We pushed too hard, too fast. And now Olivia's fighting back harder than ever. Daniel's thoughts were the darkest of all, filled with bitterness and hidden agendas. I never wanted this to get personal, he whispered inside. But now, it's war. And I'm ready to burn it all down if that's what it takes. His eyes narrowed as he watched Olivia, respect mingling with hatred. She's the only one who can stop me. And maybe the only one I need. Olivia took one slow step forward, her heels echoing like gunshots, across the warehouse floor. Her silence unnerved them more than any threat could. Every eye was on her, every breath held, every camera feeding live into the world beyond those walls. Then she reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing a small flash drive. Her expression never changed, but the fire behind her eyes exploded. You wanted a show? Her voice, calm as ice, sliced through the tension. Then let's give them one. She raised the flash drive between her fingers, letting it glint in the harsh warehouse light. Julian flinched. Daniel's jaw tightened. Sophia's eyes narrowed. This, Olivia said coldly, is the full audit of our systems. Every fraudulent wire transfer, every fake invoice, every message you thought you erased. Sophia's mask cracked. You're bluffing. Olivia's smile was sharp. You really think I'd walk into this without insurance? She strode to the table, connected the drive to Julian's laptop still unlocked, and instantly the screen flickered. File names began appearing, one by one. I had my team trace every digital breadcrumb. You didn't cover your tracks. You lit a neon trail. Julian lunged forward, panic overtaking arrogance. Shut it down, he snapped, at Daniel. But Daniel didn't move. He was frozen, watching, calculating, because deep down he knew it was over. The betrayal had flipped. Olivia wasn't falling, she was pulling the ground out from under them, and they had no idea what was coming next. Sophia stared at the screen, each file a death sentence to her plans. Her mind raced, searching for leverage and escape, anything. But Olivia's voice cut in again, low and lethal. You tried to break me. You failed. You thought this was your story, but it was mine all along. Then she hit enter. The files began uploading to every major news outlet. The files uploaded faster than they could react, line after line of cold evidence flashing across the screen. Olivia didn't flinch. She watched them burn. Julian stumbled backward like the ground had vanished beneath him. His face paled, the blood draining out like guilt made visible. This will ruin us, he whispered. But Olivia didn't blink. Sophia's nails dug into her palm, her poise crumbling second by second. The cameras kept rolling, capturing her silence, her fall. All that polish, all that power, shattered in front of the world. She turned to Olivia, voice cracking. You don't know what you've done. Olivia stepped closer, eyes locked. Oh, I know exactly what I've done. I just exposed the real villains. Daniel didn't say a word. He turned away from the chaos, shoulders stiff. But Olivia saw it, the tremble, the silent breakdown. He never planned for this kind of war, the type that stripped everything bare. She used to fear him, but now he was just a man watching everything he'd built rot beneath his feet. The live broadcast exploded online, hashtags trending, breaking news flashing, public outrage boiling over, phones buzzed, headlines screamed, investors withdrew. Within seconds, police already on their way. It was over, not with a gun, not with violence, but with truth, timed perfectly, dropped like a bomb in a room full of liars, and as sirens echoed in the distance, Olivia stood tall, not broken, not begging, not ruined. She looked into the nearest camera, face calm, voice steady. Power doesn't come from stealing or scheming, it comes from surviving. And in that moment, across 1,000,000 screens, the world finally knew her name. Not as a waitress, but as a queen. As the sirens roared closer, Julian dropped to his knees, gripping his head like he could squeeze time backward. I didn't sign up for this, he gasped. We were supposed to win. Olivia stared at him. This man who once fired her over a slip of tone now collapsed beneath his own corruption. The cameras caught it all. This was history unraveling in real time. Sophia wasn't crying, yet, but her silence was louder than screams. She reached for her phone, maybe to call someone who could still save her. But Olivia's voice struck her like a slap. There's no one left to call. That line would echo across every network in the country, and Sophia knew it. Her empire was gone, because she made the mistake of underestimating the woman she once erased, and then it happened, the moment no one expected. Daniel stepped forward, not toward Olivia, but toward the laptop. Everyone held their breath. He slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a second flash drive. You weren't the only one collecting evidence, he said, voice hollow. I wanted leverage. But maybe I wanted something else too. Olivia's heart froze. What was he doing? He plugged it in. The files were darker, deeper. Government contracts, offshore accounts, blackmail trails. Evidence not just of business fraud, but criminal conspiracy. Sophia spun toward him, her voice shaking. Daniel, what are you doing? He didn't answer her. He looked only at Olivia. If we're going down, maybe it's time I clean my soul too. That single moment shifted everything. The story changed. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about exposure, redemption, revenge. Olivia had lit the fuse, but Daniel handed her the dynamite. And when those final files began uploading, the real storm began. Not behind closed doors, but out in the open where the whole world could watch them burn. Olivia stood amid the wreckage, but her hands didn't shake. Her gaze didn't flicker. She hadn't come here to watch them fall. She'd come to rise. "You all thought this was about payback," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "But this was never about revenge." The room froze, because in that moment they realized they'd never understood her at all. "My goal wasn't to destroy you," Olivia continued, locking eyes with Sophia, then Julian, then Daniel. "It was to show the world what happens when people like me are silenced, stepped on, erased." Her words weren't loud, but they echoed like a verdict. "I wanted every waitress, every fired woman, every overlooked mind to see this, to know they're not powerless." Flashbacks ignited inside. Her like fire, scrubbing tables with swollen hands, walking home in rain, eating expired noodles to save a dream. The memory of being humiliated in front of customers by Julian, his voice cruel and dismissive. The goal wasn't to get even. The goal was to change the game, to rewrite what power looks like, to take the pain and turn it into a blueprint for others. Olivia wasn't here to watch them crash. She was here to become a beacon, and in that moment, across every screen and every shaken heart, she did. Julian finally looked up at Olivia, eyes red, lips trembling. "You were just a waitress," he said, not with venom, but disbelief. "How did I not see you?" Olivia stepped closer, voice steady but eyes burning. "Because you never looked at me. Only through me. Like I didn't exist unless I was serving you." His head dropped. For the first time in his life, he was ashamed. Sophia shook her head slowly, denial peeling off like dead skin. "I created you," she whispered. "I pushed you out. That pain made you rise." Olivia's voice cracked, not with weakness, but with truth. "You didn't create me, Sophia. You tried to erase me. I created myself, through every insult, every silent room, every no you slammed in my face." Tears welled, but she didn't blink. Daniel stepped forward again, voice lower than before. "I ruined something good in you," he said. "When I fired you, I thought I was protecting the company, but I was protecting my ego." Olivia didn't answer right away. Her chest rose with the weight of it all. "You didn't ruin me, Daniel," she finally whispered. "You gave me clarity. You made me stop waiting for a seat and build my own damn table." Silence filled the space. No shouting, no excuses. Just air, heavy with consequence and revelation. These weren't villains in chains. They were broken humans, finally seeing themselves in the shattered mirror. Olivia held up. The power wasn't in their money anymore. It was in her voice, her truth, her refusal to be invisible ever again. In that moment, Olivia felt something she hadn't expected. Not revenge, not pride, but release. She had faced them, not with hate, but with history. She had carried the weight of every humiliation, then turned it into wings. And now, standing in the ashes of their empire, she finally whispered, more to herself than anyone, "I made it." Sophia's legs gave out first. She collapsed into the chair behind her, shoulders trembling, hands limp in her lap. Her designer jacket hung off her like paper, crushed, empty. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for a door, an ally, a future. But there was nothing left. No exit, no power, just the echo of her own silence. Julian stood frozen in place, then suddenly staggered back, knocking over a chair. His breath came in sharp, ragged pulls. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he gasped. I had control. I had everything mapped. He looked down at his shaking hands, like they betrayed him. I built this empire. I did. But his voice cracked, and with it, the illusion of control shattered. Daniel walked to the corner, away from the lights, and pressed his back against the wall. He covered his face with one hand, trying to hide the tears streaming down. He had fought so hard to keep a clean image. Now he couldn't even stand straight. His shoulders heaved as his mind replayed every decision he made to silence her. This was the cost of pride. Olivia watched it all with a storm behind her ribs. But something in her cracked, too, not with regret, but with release. Her knees buckled slightly. She gripped the edge of the table, swallowing back the sob rising in her throat. She had won, but it still hurt, because power didn't erase pain, it only gave it a voice. And now that it had spoken, the weight came crashing down. The room was no longer a battleground. It was a graveyard of ego, of empire, of stories rewritten. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, just the low hum of truth hanging in the air like smoke. Olivia closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she let herself feel everything. Not fear, not revenge, just the broken, beautiful human aftermath. Sophia clawed at her phone like it was a lifeline, dialing numbers no one answered. Her voice was hoarse. Please, just fix this. Someone, anyone. But each beep of rejection sounded like a death toll. Her mascara ran down her cheeks, smeared by trembling fingers. She wasn't a titan anymore, just a woman drowning in consequences no one could save her from. Julian paced in a frenzy, mumbling nonsense, pulling at his collar like it was choking him. You set this up. You played us, he hissed, eyes wild. He kicked the glass coffee table, shattering it into pieces that scattered like his career. Blood trickled from his ankle, unnoticed. He sank to his knees, laughing through clenched teeth. This wasn't just loss. It was annihilation. Daniel slammed his fist into the wall. Once. Twice. His knuckles bled, but he didn't stop. I had a future, he groaned, teeth grinding. I had respect. The words were knives against his tongue. For years he buried his doubts. Now they screamed inside him. He looked at Olivia, not with anger, but with the agony of a man who finally saw the monster in his reflection. And Olivia. She walked into the hallway, away from the cameras, away from the noise, and collapsed against the wall. Her breath hitched, shallow and fast. Her hands trembled. For a moment she felt like she was 23 again, crying in the diner's restroom after being fired for having an attitude. She bit her lip to stop the sob, but it escaped anyway. Because even when you win, some wounds still bleed. She had fought, survived, risen, but that broken part of her, that scared girl with nothing, had never left. She curled her fingers into a fist, pressing it against her heart, and whispered, I did it. Not to boast, but to remind herself she was real, alive, standing in the wreckage, and still standing. The silence in the aftermath wasn't hollow, it was healing. Olivia stepped forward, wiping her face with the back of her sleeve. Her eyes were still glassy, but there was warmth in them now. She looked down at Daniel, still slumped by the wall, and whispered, You want to change? Then prove it. Not to me. To yourself. He looked up slowly and nodded. Sophia sat with her arms wrapped around herself like a child. Her eyes were wide, empty. I don't know how to fix this, she murmured. I don't even know who I am without the mask. Olivia knelt beside her, not out of pity, but power. "Start small," she said. "Apologize. To the people you stepped on, to the girl you used to be. She's still in there. Somewhere." Outside, reporters were gathering. Microphones, flashing lights, questions. But Olivia didn't rush. She stood tall and turned to her team, mostly young women who had followed her journey from the ground up. "We're not done," she told them. "Now we build, for real." Their smiles came slowly, then stronger, then tears, because this was the moment they had waited for. Back inside, she turned to Julian. He hadn't spoken in minutes, just sat with his head low. "You were cruel," she said. "You broke me when I was already bleeding." He didn't argue. He didn't cry. He just whispered, "I know." And when she handed him the card of a rehab program for CEOs who'd lost everything, he took it like a lifeline. It was more mercy than he ever gave her. Hope didn't scream. It whispered. It offered a hand instead of a fist. And in that room where empires had burned, a different fire began, a quiet one. One made of new choices, second chances, and the bravery to begin again. Olivia walked outside to the sunlight, lifted her chin, and smiled. Not because it was over, but because something better was about to begin. Olivia's smile faded as she looked back inside the room, where broken dreams still lingered like ghosts. She knew healing wasn't a straight line. It was jagged, painful, and slow. Daniel's eyes met hers, filled with something raw and uncertain. "Where do we even start?" he asked, voice cracking. Olivia took a deep breath and said, "By facing the truth, no matter how ugly." Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor, rubbing her temples as if to erase the past from her mind. "I've hurt people," she admitted, barely above a whisper. "I thought power was the answer, but it's poison." Emma, standing nearby, stepped forward with gentle strength. "Then let's find a new kind of power," she said, "one built on trust, not fear." Julian shuffled to the corner, still, clutching the rehab card like a fragile hope. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of admitting defeat. "I don't want to be that man anymore," he confessed, voice small but steady. Olivia nodded, her eyes burning with fierce determination. "Good. Because this is the moment we rebuild. Together." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city. The reporters had left, but their questions echoed in their minds. Healing wasn't for headlines, it was for real people. Grace, Olivia's closest friend, wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "You're not alone," she whispered. Olivia squeezed back, feeling the first stirrings of peace. As night fell, the group gathered in the quiet living room, sharing stories they'd buried deep. Laughter mixed with tears, memories clashed with hope. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and sometimes that's enough to start the hardest journey of all, understanding. The night air was thick when Olivia's phone buzzed, an unknown number. She hesitated but answered. A low voice whispered, "You don't know the whole story. The collapse wasn't just bad luck." Her heart skipped. "Who is this?" she demanded. Silence, then a sharp click. Line dead. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What was that?" he asked, rising. Olivia shook her head, unsettled. "I think someone's hiding something. Something big." Sophia's phone chimed next. An anonymous message. "Look deeper. Look at who you trust." The room tensed, breaths caught in throats. Julian's face drained of color. "It's from the board," he muttered. "They pulled the strings, set me up so they could take control." Emma's jaw clenched. "Why didn't you tell us?" Julian swallowed hard. "Because if you knew, it'd destroy you too." The weight of betrayal slammed into the room like a wrecking ball. Olivia paced, fists clenched. "We've been fighting shadows, but now we have a target. This isn't just about losing an empire. It's about exposing lies so rotten they could kill us." The team exchanged fierce glances. This was no longer a cleanup. It was a war. Then a sudden knock at the door, sharp, urgent. Everyone froze. Olivia opened it slowly. Standing there was a woman none of them expected. Ruby, the former. Insider nobody suspected, eyes fierce and unyielding. "I'm here to make things right," she said. "But the truth? It's darker than you think." Ruby stepped inside, closing the door gently behind her. The room seemed to breathe a little easier, as if her presence pulled the storm back from the windows. Olivia motioned for everyone to sit. "This is a safe space," she said, voice steady but kind. "No judgments, no secrets kept anymore." Sophia wiped a tear that had slipped down her cheek. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "But after everything, how?" Ruby took a slow breath. "Because we have no other choice. We're either broken alone, or we're whole together." The words hung heavy, but real. Daniel dropped onto the worn couch, exhaustion washing over him. "For the first time, I feel like maybe I'm not fighting ghosts." Emma nodded, her fingers trembling as she clutched a mug of coffee. "We need each other, not just to survive, but to rebuild." The weight of those words settled softly over the group. Olivia locked eyes with Ruby. "Tell us everything," she urged. "No matter how dark, we'll face it." Ruby's lips pressed tight. "There's a reason they hid the truth, but it's time to bring it all into the light, together." The fragile trust was growing, like the first green shoots after a wildfire. Outside, the night pressed close, but inside that room, walls felt stronger, safer, and for now, that was enough, because even broken pieces could start fitting back. Together. Ruby's eyes flickered with pain as she revealed the darkest secrets. "I was part of it," she confessed, voice barely steady. "The lies, the betrayals, I helped them cover it up." The room froze, Sophia's breath caught. Olivia's heart pounded, judgment clawed at her throat, but instead of anger, she took a step closer. "No," Olivia said quietly, voice firm but gentle. "You're not the enemy. You're the person who chose to come back. That takes more courage than you know." Ruby blinked, disbelief softening her hardened gaze. "I'm tired of running," she whispered. "I want to help." Daniel's jaw dropped. "After everything you did," his voice cracked, ready to condemn. But Emma reached out, placing a hand on Daniel's arm. "Look at her," Emma urged. "This is the moment that changes everything, not with fists, but with kindness." Sophia's tears spilled freely now. "I've spent so long hating myself," she said. "But maybe we can forgive each other, start fresh." Olivia nodded, feeling the shift ripple through the room. Power wasn't about control, it was about connection, and kindness was their strongest weapon. Olivia stared at Ruby, her mind a battlefield of trust and betrayal. Could she really believe someone who'd once stabbed them in the back? The weight of leadership pressed down, making every choice feel like walking on a razor's edge. "How do I know this isn't just another lie?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Daniel clenched his fists, torn between anger and hope. The man who'd lost everything still burned with the fire of justice. But what if justice meant burning bridges he needed to cross? He paced. The room, restless, voice low. Can I forgive her? Can I even forgive myself for needing this? Sophia sat silently, battling her own storm. She'd been the fiercest, the coldest, but now her heart cracked open, bleeding uncertainty. If I forgive, am I weak? Am I just letting them win? Her voice trembled, the walls she'd built shaking for the first time in years. Emma reached out, placing a steady hand on Sophia's shoulder. Forgiveness isn't about them, she said softly. It's about freeing yourself. But even as she spoke, her own doubts echoed silently. Could they really rebuild from this mess? Or was it just a beautiful lie they told themselves to survive? Outside, the city lights flickered like distant hope, fragile, wavering. Inside, the real battle raged, a fight not with others, but within themselves. And sometimes, that was the hardest fight of all. The room was thick with silence. Every eye locked on Olivia as she stood, her voice steady but carrying the weight of everything they'd lost. We've been tearing each other apart for too long, she said, fists clenched but open. But maybe the only way forward is peace. A gasp escaped Sophia, disbelief sharp in her tone. Peace? After all this? Ruby swallowed hard, her gaze flickering between hope and fear. It's not weakness, Olivia continued. It's strength. The courage to say, enough, to build something new, even from the ruins. Daniel's jaw tightened, torn between years of rage and the flicker of something softer. And if we say yes, what then? Julian, still watching from the shadows, stepped forward, his voice rough but sincere. Then we stop running. Stop hiding behind blame. We face the storm, together. But it means trust, real trust. The tension cracked, like ice under pressure, a dangerous promise hanging in the air. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. I'm ready if you are, for truth, for healing. Olivia looked around the room, seeing the flicker of hope mixed with doubt. This isn't the end, she said softly. It's the beginning of everything we fight for. Olivia's eyes glazed over as memories crashed into her like a tidal wave. She saw the boardroom betrayals, the whispered lies, faces once trusted now twisted with greed. She remembered late nights alone, clutching old photos of better days, before everything cracked. The sting wasn't just about loss, it was about shattered faith. Sophia's hands trembled as she stared at the cracked mirror in the bathroom, seeing the woman she'd become, not the girl she once was. Flashbacks of harsh words, cold betrayals, and moments she wished she could erase flickered behind her eyes. Could she ever forgive herself for the damage done? For the bridges burned in fury? Daniel sat on the park bench, the city's noise distant around him. His mind replayed every harsh word he'd shouted, every friendship fractured by anger. The faces of people he'd pushed away haunted him, begging silently for peace. The struggle wasn't just forgiving others, it was accepting his own flaws, his own guilt. Emma's gaze softened as she remembered the quiet sacrifices she'd made, the times she'd stood silent while pain unfolded around her. Could she accept that healing meant opening wounds again? That sometimes forgiveness felt like giving up? But deep down, she knew it was the only way to move forward. The room fell heavy with unspoken pain, each heartbeat echoing a shared battle between holding on and letting go. Forgiveness wasn't a gift given lightly. It was a war fought in silence, deep inside the soul. A sudden knock shattered the fragile calm. Olivia froze, heart pounding like a drum. "Who could that be now?" she whispered, eyes darting to the door. The team exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't just another visitor. This was the moment everything would change. Olivia opened the door to reveal Leo, the quiet outsider nobody had trusted before. His hands shook as he stepped inside. "There's something you all need to know," he said, voice raw. "The collapse wasn't just the board's doing. I was part of it." Gasps echoed around the room. "Why?" Sophia demanded, voice cracking. Leo swallowed hard. "Because I was scared. I thought if I didn't help, I'd lose everything, my family, my future. But I've carried this secret like a weight crushing me every day." Tears welled in his eyes. "I'm sorry." Olivia's chest tightened, but instead of fury, a strange calm washed over her. "Thank you for telling us," she said softly. "Now we can finally begin to heal." The team's tension began to unravel, replaced by a fragile sense of relief. The room erupted. Sophia's voice cracked, fury and pain colliding. "How could you keep this from us? After everything?" She slammed her fists on the table, tears blazing down her cheeks. "We trusted you, and you let us fall." Her sobs echoed like thunder, shaking the fragile calm to dust. Just as the chaos threatened to consume them all, the door creaked open again. In stepped Clara, calm, composed, and utterly unexpected. Everyone froze. Clara had always been on the sidelines, quiet but sharp. "Stop," she said firmly, voice cutting through the storm like a blade. "Blame won't fix anything, but maybe I can." Olivia's eyes searched Clara's, disbelief and hope tangled together. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice trembling. Clara took a deep breath. "I have information, proof that could turn this all around, and I'm ready to help, not because I owe anyone, but because it's right." The room shifted, eyes locking on Clara like a lifeline in the chaos. Daniel's anger wavered, replaced by cautious curiosity. "Why now?" "Because sometimes," Clara said softly, "the right choice comes from the most unexpected place." And with that, Olivia's hand trembled as she pressed play on the old voice recorder. The room fell silent, every ear straining to catch the words that would change everything. The tape crackled, then a familiar voice poured out, Leo's confession, detailed and unfiltered, naming names, exposing lies that had festered in shadows for years. The truth was laid bare, ruthless and undeniable. Sophia's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, tears streaming uncontrollably. How could we have been so blind?" she whispered, voice breaking like fragile glass. Her sobs echoed through the room, raw and relentless. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating under the weight of betrayal and regret. Daniel clutched a faded photo, the last happy moment before the fall, his vision blurred, tears burning hot as the dam inside him finally broke. "We lost everything because we turned away from the truth," he choked out. His collapse was silent, but shattering, a man undone by the ghosts of his own choices. Olivia knelt beside them both, her own tears falling freely now. The revelation had stripped them bare, left only their brokenness exposed. But in that collapse, something fragile began to form. The first flicker of real healing, born from the courage to face the pain head-on. The sun rose slowly, casting golden light through the shattered windows. Olivia stood in the quiet room, breathing in the weight of what had been lost and what was now possible. The pain was still there, raw and real, but beneath it, something stronger was growing, a promise of new life. Sophia smiled softly for the first time in months, brushing a tear from her cheek. "We made it," she whispered, "not despite everything, but because of it." Her voice was steady, filled with the strength of someone who'd survived her darkest hour and refused to be broken. Daniel looked out the window, watching the city wake. His heart ached with memories but also hope. "We're not the people we were," he said quietly, "and that's okay. We're better, wiser, ready." His words carried the weight of hard lessons learned and the courage to face what's next. Olivia turned to her team, now more like a family forged in fire. "This isn't the end of our story," she said firmly. "It's the start of something real, something honest. We'll carry these scars, but they don't define us." They nodded, a circle of resilience, ready to build a future no one could take away. Outside, life moved forward, messy, uncertain, but full of possibility. And as Olivia stepped into the light, she knew this time they were ready to rise. Together. Olivia sat alone in the quiet of the sunlit room, the soft hum of the city below a gentle reminder that life in all its chaos was still moving forward. The scars she bore were invisible to the world, but every breath she took was a silent promise to herself. This time, she would choose healing over hiding. The past was a shadow, but she was stepping into the light, ready to rebuild what had been broken. Sophia arrived quietly, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers, messy, imperfect, and full of life. She placed them gently on the table, their colors vivid against the muted walls. "I thought maybe we could start over," she said softly, eyes searching Olivia's. The apology wasn't just in words. It was in the way her hands trembled, in the vulnerability she never showed before. Daniel appeared next, slower, weighed down by his own regrets. "I never thought I'd see this day," he admitted, voice rough but honest. "But here we are. Maybe some bridges aren't meant to be burned, just rebuilt differently." His gaze lingered on the cracked floorboards beneath them, the foundation still shaky but salvageable. They all felt it, the fragile hope of renewal. Outside the window, a car pulled up. It was Julian, stepping out with tentative steps, the same man who had once shattered their world, now seeking forgiveness. Olivia's heart raced. Could she open that door? Could she trust again? The air was thick with unspoken fears and silent pleas. But in that moment, she made a choice. Not for him, but for herself. When Julian finally entered, the room held its breath. "I'm not here to erase the past," he said quietly, "but to ask if there's room for a future." Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes, the weight of years pressing down. And yet a flicker of something new ignited, a chance to let go of bitterness and step toward grace. Days turned into weeks, meetings that once bristled with tension softened into conversations filled with cautious laughter and honest confessions. The team began to feel like a family again, not perfect, but real. Emma and Clara organized weekend retreats to breathe life back into their bond, where wounds could be shared without judgment and hope could grow without fear. One evening, under a sky scattered with stars, Olivia found herself standing beside Sophia, watching the city lights flicker. "Do you think we're really okay now?" Sophia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Olivia smiled, the weight of the question settling deep. "Maybe not perfect, but enough. Enough to keep trying, enough to be free." At a charity gala months later, The team stood together, faces radiant with the glow of redemption. They spoke openly about their journey, inspiring others who had faced their own battles. Olivia's speech was raw and powerful, a testament to the strength born from vulnerability, the courage in asking for help, and the beauty in choosing love over hate. But not all bridges were rebuilt. Some, like the ones with past betrayals, were burned, quietly, without rancor. They let go with grace, honoring what was lost, but refusing to be chained by it. The strength wasn't in holding on to every broken piece, but in knowing when to release and move forward. Olivia's new normal wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about living beyond it. With every sunrise, she rewrote her story, not as a victim, but as a warrior who had reclaimed her power. And as she looked around at the faces she'd fought so hard to keep, she knew this was only the beginning. Life doesn't wait for us to be perfect. It keeps moving even through our darkest moments. What really matters is finding the courage to face the truth, forgive when it's hardest, and rebuild stronger than ever. This story is for anyone who's ever felt broken but refused to give up.